to walk us through some of the happenings in the old dying world. I don't have a crystal ball, but everywhere I look, all I can see is orange. It's a bright orange future. So, what do you got for us, Brandon?
There we go. Well, to start us off, we had Bo Hines, the former U.S. Treasurer, or I don't know, the crypto White House guy. He's now a part of Tether, and he kind of dropped a little bit of an Easter egg in this recent interview that we had when he was talking about the U.S. Strategic Reserve. So I'll play this clip for you guys initially, and then I want to hear your reactions before I kind of dive in to a little bit of the conspiracy and maybe some dots that I've connected real quick. But I'll play the clip for you guys here.
Like the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve has been signed into law through executive order. There's some infrastructure that's required in order to get things set up properly. And so I'm still very confident that the U.S. government is going to be keenly interested on moving expeditiously on budget neutral ways to accumulate. So I'd tell people just to, keep their eyes and ears open for that news that eventually I'm sure will come. But Patrick's working on that.
So I don't know if you caught the words there, but he kind of hinted that this news or some news is coming soon. And then we also had Eric Trump come out recently and say that a country quietly bought 200,000 Bitcoin. And now I want to present this to you guys to see whether or not you think if it's possible that the United States has been secretly buying Bitcoin, even though, we haven't had a huge announcement. Or do you think just Trump at this point, he just wants to be that crypto president? So if he makes any move relative to this, he's going to have to announce it just so everybody gives him the coveted pat on the back.
I think it's obvious. I think they're making moves. A lot of people like to think that the government is stupid, and I think that that's accurate if you think about the government as a whole. But I think there are individuals who understand what's happening. If they televise or talk about a move before they have executed on that move, they're going to cause that green candle to blast everybody's face off. So I think it's logical to think that there's stuff happening behind the scenes.
I have no idea.
Wait, you need some MindLab Pro?
I already took it.
Oh, I'll take some.
And I also took some theanine to calm down since we're talking about politics again.
Calm down. All right.
Well, we don't have to talk too much about politics here, but I also want to kind of, I guess I'm gonna talk about politics because Bo Hines, he's now working for Tether, and I just think Tether's connection to the U.S. government is very interesting, especially when we just saw the Genius Act and all of these, stablecoin bills pass. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but Tether holds $127 billion worth of U.S. treasuries. And so they're one of the largest privatized holders. And of course, everybody who said during the Genius Act, Tether was the one that potentially was being hurt here. But obviously, we've got Tether now hiring Bo Hines. He used to work in the White House. And then the Tether group has paired up with Jack Mallers and 21 with Cantor Fitzgerald to now fund one of these Bitcoin treasury companies. And Cantor Fitzgerald, for those of you guys at home, they used to be run by Howard Lutnick, who now is the United States Secretary of Commerce and the company's former chairman and CEO. And so if we look at Cantor's portfolio too, it is pretty interesting here where we see basically 50% of their entire portfolio has been MSTR. And this isn't something that's new. So obviously, Cantor Fitzgerald and Howard Lutnick have been very intertwined in the Bitcoin space, to say the very least. But now adding this Tether wrinkle, I don't know. I mean, it seems like everybody's been in the Bitcoin space a little, I guess, against the political sphere, saying that they're going to fight us eventually. But it seems like they're starting to embrace us. Maybe it's because they see the start of, the crypto bro vote really counting, the amount of money that was poured in to this past election cycle. But I'm curious if you guys have any worries of how closely intertwined Tether is getting, because, there's been a lot of question marks about Tether previously. I'm not saying that they're doing anything nefarious, but, as Tether and, the stable coins start to get intertwined here, it could be that backdoor for a CBDC.
Well, when I look down when I look into the future, I see basically two things unfolding. You have the atrophy of the old world taking place, and when I look that direction, there's all sorts of concerning stuff happening. But when I look the other direction, I see the world capitulating and bending the knee to this unstoppable monetary protocol. And so on that side of the fence, everything's fine. I don't think any of it matters. You know, the concerns around a CBDC, I think it's rational to think that the government is going to try to implement some sort of totalitarian fuckery, if you will. But it doesn't really matter if you have Bitcoin. They can't get your Bitcoin. They can't debase the Bitcoin. They need Bitcoin. It's all about Bitcoin. I struggle with some of this stuff because all that really matters, in my humble opinion, is Bitcoin.
That is 100% correct. You know, I think that it's not so useful. It's actually, so we're talking today about what is the U.S. government going to do? It's like, well, what do you mean by the U.S. government? There are millions and millions and millions of people that are inside of that faction. You couldn't even draw a circle and say, you know, who, these people are in, these people are out. It changes every year. The best line that I've ever seen was Rothbard saying, well, you're either a taxpayer, which is someone who's you're basically getting extorted for tax money, or you're a tax receiver. You're someone living off of that extortion. So that seems to be the line. But ultimately, this aggregate we call the U.S. government is just a lot of individuals looking out for their own self-interest. So seeing that Bitcoin optimally serves the self-interest of the individual, I think that you're just seeing the natural change in political disposition towards Bitcoin. I mean, this theory has been discussed for a long time. Once, you know, no man is better than his incentives, as they say, right? Once you have voter blocks and tax bases and other things that are contributing to tax revenue that are Bitcoin based or Bitcoin adjacent, then that political jurisdiction is going to become more and more favorable to Bitcoin, and will eventually start to buy the thing itself, because government too is a business. It too is looking out for its self-interest, no matter where you circumscribe it, right? No matter who the cohort of taxpayers are in any given moment, it serves every individual. So the theory for me has always been, the metaphor that I've drawn upon is like a Bitcoin being like a form of digital acid, like it's like dissolving legacy power structures. And so it's not very useful to look into the future and say, what is this aggregate going to do? Because this aggregate is not going to remain relevant or even existent into the future. I really think this is the dissolution of the nation state as the dominant model. No one wants to say that because it's scary and it's way outside the Overton window. But guess what, guys? We are equivalent to being in the 1500s under the dominance of the medieval church, and we're talking about the printing press here. You know, this is not something like, oh, what's the medieval church going to do for the next several hundred years? Like, well, it's not going to be around. That's what it's going to do. And other power structures are going to rise in its wake. So, you know, I hate to always come back to this point, but I don't know what else to say at this point in the Bitcoin rabbit hole. It's like, this is how I see it. I would feel silly and shallow to sit here and just speculate about the U.S. government, what it's going to do, and who it's going to extort to continue its existence. It's on its way out. This is the end. Get used to it. No one's coming to save you. Centralized power is in decline. This is the digital age. It's the age of self-sovereignty. So embrace it or suffer.
You know, another thing I'll say too, when it comes to thinking about the government co-option of Bitcoin, I don't know, is the Bitcoin network gonna fail? The very thing that makes these sociopathic shitbags do whatever is necessary to serve their self-interest is the same driving force that's gonna cause them to adopt Bitcoin. And correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, I don't know of any other thing, I guess, that serves the self-interest of the individual while simultaneously serving the interest of the collective. I mean, have we ever had anything like that in human history?
Maybe not something so directly financial, but, you know, to be a little more general, the economic division of labor serves the individual as well as the collective, right? And Adam Smith wrote about this in The Wealth of Nations. It's not out of the charity of his heart that the baker bakes the bread or the pen maker makes the pen, right? They're doing this out of their own self-interest, but in everyone operating in their own self-interest under the social institution, which is a constraint ultimately on behavior of private property, which means people don't steal from one another and they don't harm one another. Under that constraint, you get a collectively better outcome. You improve GDP per capita or aggregate productivity so that total wealth in the world and innovation increases dramatically. That's a thing, that's a process that aligns individual incentives with the collective. But it's not an asset. The social division of labor is just a process that's occurring in the marketplace, and Bitcoin is actually an accelerant to that process. So has there ever been a tangible asset that does that? I mean, I guess you could make arguments for gold again, right? Like, you holding gold was in your best interest, but it also created this sound monetary substrate on which we could build a global economy. Obviously it wasn't perfect, but you could also draw metaphors from language, mathematics and language. These things obviously serve the individual as much as they serve the collective. They let us interconnect our minds and things like this. So anyways, when you get down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you end up grasping at all of these metaphors. It's kind of like gold. It's kind of like mathematics, kind of like the division of labor. It's actually an accelerant to the division of labor. And that is really the secret sauce that makes human beings at the top of the food chain. The fact that we can cooperate flexibly in large numbers under symbolic structures in a way that no other animal can. I mean, no other animals really can at all, specifically under symbolic structures, troop of apes tops out at a few hundred or maybe a few thousand, but you can unite, 100 million people under a national flag. So that's why we are tippity top of the food chain, and Bitcoin gives us that one flag of individual self-sovereignty under which we can all unify from now until, I don't know, we move into a post-money world, presumably.
As American Hodl said, the next 1,000 years.
Yeah.
1,000 years. We're going to run this shit for the next 1,000 years. Get some Bitcoin.
15 into 1,000-year cycle.
So early.
No, I mean, I definitely agree with you guys. I just think that there's some sort of, in this world, when we have like these massive Bitcoin holders, like a MicroStrategy, for example, right? I mean, Sailor and MicroStrategy at this point have more Bitcoin than all the government entities combined, with over 600,000 just themselves. So, how do you see the privatized, well, I guess these publicly traded companies now, but in a sense, almost like a private entity, right? These companies start to, I guess, merge into this world as, the sovereign individual thesis starts to play out with, this free and open source money.
Say that again. I was reading the chat. I wasn't paying attention.
Basically,
newbie to the live stream world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering like how you guys see this playing out, because I mean, obviously, you're lining out governments are eventually going to dissolve with Bitcoin, and I think that we're eventually going to get there. But I think a unique aspect of what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of people, I guess, unite by companies in a sense, right? Whether it's their job, they're publicly, traded, they own some of their stock. Maybe it's just almost like a cult-like following when it comes to, strategy right now. But how do you see those companies, I guess, progressing in a world where we potentially could see, the dissolvement of government entities?
I mean, you could go to the book, The Sovereign Individual. It talks about this specifically, right? It's not just the nation state would be the largest organizational paradigm that we're currently under. The money printer inside the nation state also serves the excessive centralization of corporate entities as well, right? This is why we have companies that are too big to fail, right? That's not actually possible in a free market. That's like saying an animal is too big to die or something. It doesn't make any sense. Nature functions through the continual death and renewal of organisms, just like capitalism functions through the continual death and renewal of businesses. When you have a company that's too big to fail, that means you've got one institution that's monopolized the money printer that will print money forever, and until the currency hyperinflates, to prop up industries that would otherwise die and go out of business. So all the centralization you see in the world, big food, big pharma, big ag, big whatever, any big thing that you see people typing their conspiracy theories about has its roots in big money, which is central banking, the central planning of money. So the sovereign individual, not to go all the way into that book, but basically it makes the point that we're moving into an era where I won't go into the reasons why, I have in the past, but we're moving into the era of decentralization. And so that the nature of work and the purpose of the firm itself is being called into question, right? The nature of the firm, this was a book, maybe by that title, The Purpose of the Firm, The Nature of the Firm, something like that, 50, 60 years ago. It was basically saying that you needed to aggregate people into these large groups called companies so that you could amortize the transaction costs of creating contracts between people. Well, in the digital age, that's true in a paper-based society because transaction costs are very high in a paper-based society. There's a large cost of moving information, verifying information, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess what? Those costs have absolutely collapsed in the digital age, right? So this is why the thesis in that book is that we'll move from a world that's dominated by a few of these megacorps, again, which are further, megafied, if you will, by the printing of money, and you move into a world of work that's looks more like movie making in Hollywood, where basically independent agents come together for a project. They work on a movie for 9 months and then they disband and they go, they're all free agents again. And so there's this constant intermixing of people that's project centric rather than corporate centric. And so it's a much more dynamic, decentralized future of work. And I think we're just barely getting into that, but you already see it. There's a lot of freelancing, like especially in the digital space, right? There's a lot of freelance media businesses. People are doing YouTube channels. People are influencers, like all of these little project-based things. And so I think you'll just see more of that rise and more of the centralized structures fall. And there, again, I'm describing the dissolution of centralized power structures into a more decentralized milieu. And that's obviously the Bitcoin is a part of that, but it's not just Bitcoin. It's also, it's what we're doing right now, right? We're doing decentralized media right now, right? I always joke, my mom's thing when she was a child in the 70s was we had channels 3, 6, and 9, and if the president was on, you were fucked, right? Those were their media options. And what do we have today? We have, I don't know, infinite channels basically on YouTube and everywhere else. So, yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer, but I hope that answered some of your questions somewhere in there.
That was good. That was one of those things that I would have to rewind to unpack what you said probably a few times. I've lost that privilege, but gained the privilege of sitting next to you. So maybe later on I can go back.
When transaction costs go down, it's just cheaper to run small businesses. It's the opposite problem with money printing, because when you print money, you create more regulations. That's difficult for small businesses to comply with. Regulations equals transaction cost, basically, right? It's harder for a small business. Yeah, well, there's more fixed cost to being a business. So therefore, the incentive is to get too big to fail or die trying.
Right.
So you get more and more decentralization. This is the opposite of that. You're just reducing all these fixed costs and transaction costs. So you get more and more of a free market, decentralized world.
That makes sense. Sometimes you got to tell it to us like we're 5.
Doing my best. Doing my best.
Your best.
But I mean, I definitely think, yeah, I mean, that's a really unique, I'm not unique, but that's a great way to put it. And I think, it's dumbing it down for us folks at home too. But, you mentioned gold previously. Obviously, everybody's gone through the differences between gold and Bitcoin. But do you think that there's some sort of transition? We just had gold hit new all-time highs today. So I think that this is kind of a timely conversation. Do you think that gold is going to play a role in the future, or is it just going to be something where it's, jewelry maybe initially and the use and kind of the monetary use of gold is just going to fade away and be Bitcoin and Bitcoin only? Or is there going to be people hanging on to that, I guess, like the classic gold model, at least for, some time here?
Well, something Jamie Dimon said, which I think is correct, but he was wrong about where he was applying this comment. I think gold is the pet rock that's useless, and I think it got us to where we're at in the world. But I think gold, because it's limited in its portability, and needed some sort of derivative system on top of it. That's effectively what we have today. We've detached in 1971. Gold got us as far as it could. And Satoshi came in right at the right time and offered us a better monetary technology. And actually, on a positive note, when I look at the world today, it's really easy to get fucked up about Clown World and all the atrocities taking place. But on the flip side of that, if you want to have a glass half full perspective, we had a very limited monetary technology that allowed us to build the world that we're in today, the global commerce, all the things that we have going on. There's a lot of good stuff in the world today, as fucked as it is. But yeah, so I don't know about gold in the future. Another issue with gold, in my humble opinion, is if we like revalued gold. We had Lynette Zhang on the show. I had the privilege of sitting there having a conversation with her. She's older. She's a gold bug, hardcore. The problem with gold is it's bad for the environment. If the gold price rips, a bunch of unprofitable miners are going to become profitable and they're going to go rip up the forest floor. So the mining of gold is not good. And then what? Like, gold, I think gold was great before we had bulldozers and computers, but now we have the ability to mine a lot more gold. So Bitcoin, it's paying us to figure out how to make faster computing devices and to figure out how to harness cheaper and more efficient electricity. So I don't know about gold in the future. You got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah. Well, anytime you're talking about the future, right? Be careful. Those who live by the crystal ball are bound to eat glass, as they say.
Why I see orange.
So you got to do everything. Look at everything probabilistically is always my recommendation. There are two broad paths that I can see. There's a future characterized by things like the internet and artificial intelligence and electricity, right? These seem to be electricity for sure. I think most people would agree that it's a permanent feature of our lives. The internet is probably there. It's definitely getting close. We still have some centralized internet service provisioning issues to work through, but decentralized options are on the rise. AI is the newest, but it's probably also going to become a permanent feature of our lives in the years ahead. So there's one broad view of the future, which is the digital age, right? We've got electricity, internet, artificial intelligence. In that world, there is little question that Bitcoin is the dominant money. In fact, as we've joked before, it might be the new Turing test for artificial intelligence. The old Turing test was something like, could a human interact with an artificial intelligent agent and not be able to tell whether it was human or not? Well, we've already passed that test, as many of you probably know. Anyone who's had a chat with ChatGPT could see that it's pretty damn difficult to know if you're talking to someone or you're talking to a robot. So what's the next Turing test? Well, I think it's if an AI actually admits and accepts and starts using Bitcoin, because that's proof of intelligence as far as I can tell. And if an AI is not favorable to Bitcoin, well, that's proof of unintelligence. So there's that whole world. AIs will need to interact with one another. AIs can only deal with digital property. They cannot own property in the real world because guess what? It's artificial. It's not really here. It's just an abstraction. So to the extent that AIs are engaging in commercial activity, they will absolutely have to make use of Bitcoin. So therefore, Bitcoin is money for AI. We also have the runaway money printing of nation states, and that will serve the rise of Bitcoin in the hands of us normie humans in the digital age. And on what's the other end of the spectrum here? Oh, and then obviously electricity prices would be getting cheaper and cheaper in a world that has those things, because guess what? AI is a huge consumer of electricity, as is Bitcoin. So there's a massive perpetual global bounty program for people to develop cheaper energy resources. So there's one view of the world. In that view of the world, Bitcoin is definitively dominant. Gold is definitely demonetized because gold is a rock. It is literally Stone Age money. That's what it is. It's a stone. It's a pretty stone, but it's a stone. But there's another view of the future, and it's also possible, right? We could have whatever nuclear apocalypse or solar storm catastrophe or cosmic radiation burst or extraterrestrial intelligence invasion, whatever, right? Something really dystopian where we don't have electricity, internet, and artificial intelligence, right? We could get kicked back into the Stone Age. I think it's a pretty low probability event, but it is possible. And in that dystopian view of a non-digital future, I think gold would be the dominant money. So if you are an intelligent, rational person, you should, by the way, this is not the only two possibilities. I'm just trying to speak broadly real quick to get Bitcoin and gold into the picture. You should develop your own probabilistic worldview of the future and then allocate your portfolio accordingly. If I think there's a 95% chance that we're going to move into the digital age with electricity, internet, and artificial intelligence, and I think there's a 5% chance we're going into that dystopian stone age of no electricity, no internet, and no artificial intelligence, then the cash position of my portfolio would be 95% Bitcoin and 5% gold. So choose your percentages and allocate accordingly.
Yes. Well, I will add to this. I sold all my gold. I have concerns about a dystopian future, but I didn't sell my lead. Speaking of lead, actually, we're doing some firearm training here in a few weeks.
And lead's valuable in both of those worlds. More valuable in the Stone Age world, but it's also valuable in the digital world.
Yeah, and when I talk to people about this and, some of the gold bugs, they're like, well, what if the internet goes out? Well, first order of business, in my humble opinion, would be figure out how to get back online. Our entire civilization requires the internet to function. So I agree with Robert. The likelihood that we end up in some blackout situation without the internet for a prolonged period of time is not likely, but you should still be prudent.
Yeah, and it also doesn't happen all at once, right? That people act like there's this binary, like, oh, the internet is on or off. It's like, no, the internet is any two or more computers that are interconnected. So you're very likely, if we're going the track across history of no internet or less internet, well, we're going to see outages in local places over time. Well, people are smart. People pay attention. You start seeing outages of centralized ISPs, internet service providers. Well, then that creates more demand and incentive to create mesh networks and other decentralized solutions. You've also got Starlink and all these other things going into the orbit. So it's not black or white. It's not like internet on today and internet off globally everywhere tomorrow. That's not how the internet works. That's not what the internet is. The internet is a decentralized, amorphous network. It doesn't just on or off. And as it goes more off, well, then there's an incentive to do other things that are resistant to taking it offline. Because as you said, everyone, every business, all commercial activity in the world now, directly or indirectly, depends on the internet.
Wouldn't you say that applies to like fiat? You can't just flip a light switch and just turn off our current existing monetary system. This is a global system that we have, and then turn on a new one. And it's like we got one that's basically dying, it's becoming irrelevant, but it's fighting back in all its ways.
I would agree that it doesn't typically transition that way, but here's the fucked up thing about fiat is you can turn it off actually overnight. You should go look at the case study about the 500 rupee banknote in India. I don't know, whatever. They decided that it was no longer a currency overnight. So people had stashed, wads of these 500 rupee banknotes in their mattress and safes or whatever. And then overnight, by legal decree, it's no longer accepted. So if you don't like money that can get instantly frozen, instantly seized, instantly deauthorized, right? Again, for all of you doomers and what do they call these guys? Preppers out there that are stashing cash in your mattress and your safe. Like, well, that doesn't mean the Fed can't say, you know what? Those Benjis you got stashed, they're not cash anymore. We just decided last night. That's over. No more $100 bills. And you watch the market react to that. That's not possible with gold. And that's not possible with Bitcoin.
Yeah, those are hard monies, not limp monies.
Market monies, not state monies.
The limpest, flaccid, useless money. How are you trying to penetrate the future with your economic energy with limp money, dude? Come on. What are you gonna use? I want the hardest money possible.
I know. I was looking up that the 500 Indian rupee note just to kind of give a little context. But it looks like it was introduced in 1987, and then they changed it to 1,000 note in 2000. But they discontinued the 500 note in 1995. So literally 8 years later, they're just like, nope, 500 banknotes. Those are no good here anymore. But you guys were talking too about the rise of the internet, and I think that kind of it's being shown, the amount of electricity that we have, and with the amount of hash rate that we have coming online. It seems like almost every other day we're reaching a new all-time high in the hash rate. And then we're seeing, even the president's son get into a publicly traded Bitcoin mining company. So, I think the writing is on the wall here, where everybody is seeing like the true power of AI and Bitcoin in this kind of world that is colliding. And, to your point, if the internet goes out, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I walk around down the street and some places don't even accept cash anymore. It's all paper and card, or it's all card at this point right now. So if the internet goes down, I think it's like 90% of all money, US dollars in circulation, like can't be printed or is not printed at this point. So it's all just number on the screen anyway. So, I think like people just resort back to the physical cash. But if you try to go to your bank right now and, sure, maybe not everybody has $100,000 in your bank account, but maybe even $10,000, you try to go to your bank and get that in cash. At an average bank, you're going to have a very hard time just getting that amount in cash right now as it stands.
Yeah. It's a database.
Yeah.
It's always a database, and it doesn't have to be a formal computerized or digital database for that matter. Gold, it's like whatever asset we ascribe the role or function of money to becomes this database, right? So like whoever's holding the gold when gold is money, as it is today, by the way, it's still geopolitical money, right? Nations hoard this and settle in it and go to war over it, all those things. That is meant to be a proxy. It's like an informational proxy of like, okay, who has played this economic game intelligently, right? Who has solved problems for consumers profitably, right? Delivered solutions into the market that are better, faster, and cheaper than competing solutions. And so money is a database, right? Elon Musk has said this. It's just a database for labor. It doesn't really matter. It's just an abstraction. The problem with that line of thinking, though, is you are failing to account for who gets to update the database, which is the most important function of any record-keeping system, right? If you're going to depend on records, whether this is a history book or a tally of who owes what favors or who owes what money, well, you better be able to trust the accountant, right? The guy that's actually keeping the records, because if he can just arbitrarily modify them, well, then they can literally rewrite history. And this is where we get that saying, history is written by the winners, right? It's often when one country conquers another, they go in and rewrite all their history and say, you know what, we were the best and this was a moral crusade and blah, blah, blah. So gold is good in the sense that it can't be artificially printed or counterfeited. So it's a solid database in that sense, that it actually has good social memory of who's rendered what favors profitably to other people. The problem with gold as a database, though, is that it can be physically seized. So you don't actually need to go and solve a problem for a consumer to obtain gold if you can just bomb the shit out of their country and rob their central bank. And then you get all this gold and you're like, hey, look at me. I'm, a great entrepreneur. And that's, basically the problem we've been in to get all the way to the nation state paradigm, is that gold is an invitation to violence, as has been said. Fiat is even worse. You basically have a perpetual rewrite of that database every time they print money. It is a centralized institution awarding itself these economic points we call currency without rendering any actual useful work to anyone in the marketplace. So that's like a perpetual rug pull, basically, when you're dealing with fiat currency inflation. And then finally, Bitcoin. So yes, money is a database. It's, tracking who has rendered what favors to who in an economically efficient way and who is therefore due similar favors in return. The difference with Bitcoin, of course, is that it is the only incorruptible database in the history of the human race. This is the magic of Bitcoin, the giant spreadsheet in the sky that no one can unilaterally rewrite. You can only obtain Bitcoin through consensual market action by solving problems for people, delivering solutions that are better, faster, cheaper than other marketplace competitors. There's an old saying, he's a philosopher what's his name? I think it's Schmidt. He's a German guy. He wrote about war and philosophy, and Eric Kaysen often likes to cite him, but he has this quote that sovereign is he who can decide the exception. So if you're playing a game and someone can make an exception to the rules, then they are sovereign over you in that game. If we're playing the game of Monopoly and we're all bound by the rules, except one guy can just, create new sheets of paper that say, their money, so he can bend the rules for himself and therefore break the rules, basically playing a game of economic apartheid at that point. There's one set of rules that applies to him and another set of rules that applies to everyone else. Clearly, that guy is going to win every game of Monopoly you ever play, because the objective of Monopoly is to accumulate the most money. So if the rules no longer apply to me, the scarcity of money no longer applies to me, then I'm going to defeat you every single time, right? Therefore, I am sovereign over you. I am your slave master, effectively. Well, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a database that suffers no exceptions. It's an exception-proof database. It cannot be altered or corrupted unilaterally by everyone. So it stands to reason that any participant in the Bitcoin network is therefore sovereign over themselves, because there is no one above them. There is no one who can abdicate from the level playing field that Bitcoin imposes. And therefore, there is no more guys deciding any exceptions, because there are no exceptions to be decided. Therefore, every player is sovereign. I don't know if that answered the original question, but
big time. It's a checkmate. I think about this like this has been an ongoing, since the beginning of known history, a galactic battle between good and evil, and good just moved into a checkmate. It's like a checkmate.
Yeah.
And where people don't need to know how they're getting screwed. They know that they're getting screwed. And I feel like this is why so many people in the world are so broken inside. They're just going into the world. They're trying to take care of their family, trying to work, save up some money, buy a house, and they're just getting screwed. And what they want is moving further and further away from them if they live in the old system. This is why it's so important to just upload your life into the new network that's going to run the world. The world is going to use Bitcoin. It's painfully obvious. I'll preface that and say it's probabilistic. But it's so highly probable, it's easy to talk in certainties. I just don't. That's why Jeff Booth, I love what Booth says. If it stays decentralized and secure, it quite literally changes everything.
Yeah, 100%. And I think like another unique and kind of faulty aspect of gold compared to Bitcoin is that, even though it does cause wars and all this, it's like, we've had gold for so long, and Bitcoiners were talking about the potential of doing this, I guess tax-free way in order to purchase more Bitcoin on the balance sheet, not realizing that it's, in order to audit Fort Knox, the estimated time for that to happen is like 18 months. So a year and a half just to audit Fort Knox to see if we really actually have the gold that everybody is saying at this point. And of course, we have the alleged strongest military in the world, so nobody's going to really come in and attack us. But on the flip side of things, obviously gold and oil and all of these other resources have been, the cause of many wars for so many years. And, we've been using other excuses like this country may have nuclear weapons or something else. But in reality, we've just been going after, these precious, I guess, assets in a sense, right? Whether it's gold or oil for energy. So, kind of changing that up and allowing the open source ledger of Bitcoin, allowing us to almost like verify whether or not we have, the Bitcoin that we say, or if there's somebody buying that Bitcoin. I think it leaves a lot of the questions out of there. And so, back to the earlier point about getting rid of those governments, it definitely then, kind of takes that away. And, governments can't really lie to the people quite as much. And, Robert, you brought up the decentralization of media. And I think we're seeing that just with like the spread of news and information too, with social media, just kind of seeing that, go from one place to another. and the reactions and kind of the opening of all of that. So I think the combination of, not only social media, but AI and Bitcoin, the power that the average person now has, and that can reach, we're talking to thousands of people right now just through the airwaves. I think that it's honestly incredible, and it's going to shape the way that the future is going to be, to say the very least. And it's kind of flipping the present on its head. And Eric, you were saying it's kind of taking the power away from these people, and taking the potential of the corruption away as well. So I think is a long-winded way of saying, I think that it's just the obvious choice of Bitcoin, and that we're going to get there. It's just a matter of when. And I think that timeline, every time I turn around, seems to be accelerating, to say the very least.
The one I would just, if I may add one thing there, auditing, the idea of auditing Fort Knox, for instance, right? That we're going to have an auditor go in there and verify that all the gold that the government says is there is actually there. That's still not a verification. You're still trusting an auditing firm. You're trusting another centralized institution that the government can easily coerce, manipulate, cut the head off of, right? Governments are really good at dealing with centralized institutions. So you're just shifting the trust from the government says we have the gold to the auditor the government picked said they have the gold, right? So you can never verify gold holdings unless you yourself as an individual go and put eyes and hands. And even then you need to assay the gold as well to make sure it's not
Could be
gold.
tungsten.
Exactly. Make sure it's not gold-plated lead or whatever. It is not to say that gold is auditable, like Bitcoin is auditable, is to misstate the truth. Basically, Bitcoin is fully verified every 10 minutes, right? The total supply, the total allocation, all of the consensus rules, everything is how certain is it? As certain as mathematics, basically, every 10 minutes, right? It's mathematically, cryptographically verified, inarguably verified. It's incontrovertible. Whereas all the other air quote audits of gold are trust me, bro, right? It might be a string of trust me bros, but it's still trust me bros. So it will never work. And this is the problem, right? This is the opening line in the white paper, I'm pretty sure, maybe not the opening line, but the problem with traditional currency is all the necessary trust to keep it together, right? That we're playing games with one another. There's a major incentive to defect from the game and deceive one another, to either give you tungsten and call it gold, or to give you $1 and say we won't print it and then we print it, or say we won't bomb you and then we bomb. Like there's a natural antagonism among people because we live under conditions of scarcity. So trust is a very difficult thing for us to maintain. And this is why it's a little bit counterintuitive, but Bitcoin as the ultimate trust minimization technology takes the man out of the middle, the human out of the loop, and just permanently cements the management of money, the money supply, in a fair and equitable game based on thermodynamics, mathematics, and Darwinian self-preservation. So it's like that serious. It's not even it's not the same species even. We call it digital gold because we need all these metaphors to describe the new thing that we have a very hard time describing because it's such a new thing. But ultimately, these are just, the six blind guys touching the elephant. One calls it a wall, one calls it a rope, one calls it a trunk, whatever. Bitcoin is the biggest deal in the history of the human race.
Oh, word to that. Yeah, people are like, oh, we need to audit Fort Knox. I'm like, missing the point. It doesn't matter. I got a node at home, a little honest digital auditor auditing the blockchain every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's the future. Seems to be indisputable. I don't know how to see anything outside of that.
Yeah, and you don't have any like random reports. Like, I don't know if you guys remember this back in December, but there was an alleged report that came out that El Salvador was sitting on $3 trillion worth of unmined gold. And who knows if that report was true. And then we had the Winklevoss twins trying to orange pill people, saying, hey, Elon is going to start to shoot rockets into space to mine gold off of asteroids as well. So obviously there's that fixed supply and that scarcity of Bitcoin that I think, it's not only the verifiability of Bitcoin, and I don't even know if that's a real word. And I'm just, kind of making some stuff up
We
here.
got a
but that is
dictionary right here. Verifiability.
No, verifiability. That's better
Verifiability.
than auditability, right?
There we go.
Auditability is like, okay, great. You get Trust Me Bros, and you get a little less, you get a little more certainty about how much, who's holding how much gold, but you never get perfect certainty. That's what, verify is related to the word veritas, truth, veracity. You can only get that with Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think the other kind of unspoken hero of Bitcoin is like tangential to that on the 21 million, the fixed hard cap and that scarcity. And I don't think, even humans really understand the scarcity aspect of Bitcoin just yet. Because I think if it did, we'd see the Bitcoin price, significantly higher at this point because we've never really had anything that is, I guess, in a sense, truly scarce. Like we're saying here, like maybe it's gold, maybe it's oil, but everybody has always been trying to find other solutions for that. But there's seemingly, outside of maybe some people, dabbling in the altcoins or something, trying to find a different type of Bitcoin. There's no there's no way that we could really escape that hard cap of that 21 million with Bitcoin. So I think that's another part of it that is on top of the verifiability of Bitcoin that just makes it the purest form of money that we'll ever see, ever, and the transfer of borders and everything like that. I mean, I just think it's a matter of time at this point.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, how about you? Because you do a really good job at this. Tell us why we discovered scarcity, and so you can't rediscover scarcity again. All these altcoins and value propositions, all this nonsense, people looking for the next thing. The notion that Bitcoin is the MySpace of crypto.
Well, first of all, I would restate the question actually. So scarcity is just anywhere demand exceeds supply. All right. So anytime there's more want for a thing than there is of the thing to satisfy the want. So, anything, right? Anything that has a market price basically is scarce because that is the signal that, hey, there's not enough of this thing to go around. We have to do a bid ask process to figure out who gets what, basically. So anything that has a market price, there's more demand for it than there is supply of it.
That's why there's no price on air.
Oh, and there you go. So it's separate than value, right? So you can have something that has a price, or you can have something that has incredible value, like it's air, very important. We don't make it very far without it. Yet there's such a high supply of it that even all the people breathing and all the animals and all the organisms breathing on the earth all the time can't deplete the supply to make it scarce. So it's, let's hope it stays that way. It's hyper abundant basically. So it's invaluable, which saying the value of it is basically limitless because it's what keeps you alive, but it has no price because the supply exceeds the demand. So scarcity, I wouldn't say we discovered scarcity. It's like we exist under conditions of scarcity, right? Our life, you are mortal, everyone. Very important to remember. You're going to die. Everyone that can hear this is going to die. This is not me being a Debbie Downer. This is me telling you to open some stoicism and get with it and start accepting it. That is scarcity, right? You have more want. You want more of your lifetime than you actually have, whatever it is, unless you suicide, but that's an exception. Also, space is scarce, right? Like I can only occupy so much space, and there's a limited amount to go around. This is why we have real estate, for instance, right? There's prices on it. Anything with a market price basically is scarce. So economics is the science of how humans act or make decisions under conditions of scarcity. The other, so we can do that in a peaceful way. We can do the bid-ask process of market pricing to allocate scarce resources, or we can do it the unpeaceful way, which is conflict, right? We can try to steal each other's shit, basically. These are the two paths, contract or conflict. So, not so much that we discovered scarcity. I mean, I guess you could say we conceptualized it, but we've always been under it, right? So long as we've been breathing mortals, then we've been under conditions of scarcity. Bitcoin, more as like, this is where it gets a little murky, like scarcity. Here's the thing about money conceptually, is that it is always scarce, because money lays claim to every good and service that the market can bear, right? So everything that has a market price is denominated in money. And because it has a market price, it is scarce. And money is the thing that you can use to obtain anything the marketplace can bear. So therefore, money is always scarce. There's always a want for more of it than there is, right? So conceptually, money is always scarce.
And wouldn't you say it's the only thing in the marketplace that has infinite demand on it? Because
Well,
I
that's
think you've
you're
said this,
saying
it's
the same thing.
effectively it's a call option on any good or service place. the
Which is another
marketplace
way
can
of saying the
produce.
same thing. Like there's no situation where money would not be scarce unless you get into, again, a post-money world. But in that world, money would still be scarce. We just wouldn't be using money anymore because we developed 0 point energy or whatever the thing is, which by the way is very unlikely to happen. We might get really cheap energy. I don't know if we're going to get zero cost energy because perpetual motion machines have been proven impossible under thermodynamics. So that's probably never going to happen. So you can let go of that dream and just get back to stacking sats. Money, so scarcity is then imputed as a monetary property. And then what you want, this is where hard money comes into play versus limp money, as you were saying earlier. You want a money with a very inflexible supply, because everyone wants it. If it's got a limp supply and anyone can just print it willy-nilly, well, then that's what people are going to do until that money fails to be a good money, right? It'll be less scarce than the goods and services that it is pricing. So markets always coalesce around the hardest money, which is the money that has the supply, which is hardest to expand. Okay, so gold historically is the most relatively scarce money because its supply only increases, 2% a year on average, but there's still bonanzas. There's still the possibility of technological disruption with gold too. We can make lab-grown gold today. We can do that today. We already make gold in a lab today. The only issue is it can't be done. The energy necessary to produce it is so expensive that it's not economically viable, right? So to produce, I don't know, if an ounce of gold is $4,000 an ounce, then to produce that ounce of gold in a lab today is some crazy number, right? $4 quintillion or whatever the thing is. But if we get energy cheap enough, we already have the industrial process to counterfeit gold today. So there's the possibility that Bitcoin and giving us this
Bitcoin
incentive
further kills
to
gold.
reduce energy prices over time could ultimately compromise gold completely as a monetary technology. So there's all that. Gold is the most relatively scarce asset historically. That's why it has been Stone Age money. Bitcoin is absolute scarcity, though. This is the discovery. This is the discovery that it represents, right? Satoshi invented Bitcoin, but the invention is equivalent to or leads to the discovery of absolute scarcity, which is absolute means it does not change. It cannot change. So Bitcoin supply is fixed, right? It does not move, does not change. This is why I compared it to the number 0. Like it's the centerpiece to an entire language, basically. And so that's a one-time discovery. You can't make any other shitcoin that has either a fixed supply, because then you're back into trust me, bro situations. How do you know that the supply is actually fixed? You can't make anything with a diminishing supply because you wouldn't know how to allocate that diminishment. Plus, you would still be in the trust me, bro situation. And any money that has an expanding supply is inferior to Bitcoin. So, the ancient Greeks used this word inventio, which means to invent and to discover. It means both. So Satoshi inventioed absolute scarcity. And it happens once. It will never happen again. You XRP retard.
Sorry,
That's
guys.
not fixed supply.
Sorry, guys.
You're
Some
gonna
of them
trust
might
me,
be here.
bro.
We clickbaited.
You're
them,
getting rugged all the time. If you're not a bot, you're a retard. It will never be another fixed supply asset. It will just never happen. So you might as well give up and have some humility, study the nature and history of money, and then ultimately you will start stacking sats like the rest of us.
And it won't be too late. It'll still be the best thing to buy. It'll always be as long as it exists, it'll be the best monetary instrument.
Best asset. Because the other thing we didn't talk about is like the nature of property rights themselves are trust me bros. All right. The state's like, hey, we're going to preserve this perimeter with violence, and then everyone inside of here can own their stuff. As long as they pay us the property tax and the sales tax and the wheel tax and the inheritance tax and the blah, 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 blah. So it's like, trust me, bro, I won't steal your shit as long as you keep paying me.
Sounds like California I just escaped.
There you go. But what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin's a property right independent of the state. It is crazy. It's like, the mind blowing never stops. It's the perfection of private property. It's inviolable private property. It's the only thing you can own without depending on the promise of anyone else. And this is why Bitcoin in self-custody is absolutely critical. If you don't have your Bitcoin in self-custody, you don't have Bitcoin. You have a promise from someone, and you're in a trust me, bro, and you're going to get rugged.
All it takes is figuring out what to do with 12 words. I know that's scary for some people. I remember the first time I fired up a wallet, moving my
Yes.
coins off of Coinbase. It was a big deal, but it wasn't that complicated. Not that complicated. 12 words away from freedom.
I too like the word metanoia, Matt Hicks. I'm still kind of mystified by it though. Something like noticing you're noticing. And I really like how Bitcoin encourages people to take that metacognitive step backwards again and again and again and again. It's like once you do it once, you're like, what is money? And you're like, oh shit, I didn't. Then you have to do it again and you do it again. And before you know it, you're fucking reading Plato and the history of consciousness and all this crazy stuff. So the Bitcoin rabbit hole is awesome.
It's a little psychedelic. You know, speaking of the comments, we got somebody in here. Monetile dysfunction.
You should sell your
MD.
XRP, bro.
MD. Nobody wants MD. How are you gonna fuck the future with MD, dude? Come on.
There's also one comment out there that I think it's interesting because the traditional financial world they love the argument that you need to inflate the money away in order to continue that growth. I think it's Mr. Dinkles in here in the chat says Mike Green argues that scarcity is bad because the people will be born poor. So I don't know. I mean, that was a great little riff there, Robert. So I don't know if you have any response to that, because it seems like everybody in TradFi always thinks that the scarcity is a bad thing.
That was good. You don't laugh all that often, dude.
Well,
when
I'm
you're
laughing
doing-
about Mike Green.
Yeah.
Mike Green is a complete joke of a human. I'm sorry, but I've already debated him once, and he's just Bitcoin derangement syndrome is strong in that one. He's just very people talk. I don't know. These other macro econ TradFi guys are like, oh, he's such a towering intellect and he's read so many books and blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, what's wrong with Bitcoin? And he's like, and he says that the scarcity is going to make people poor. Tell me how people not getting stolen from is going to make them poor, Mike. Walk me through that logic, please.
Sounds like a John Maynard Keynes.
We just walked through the whole logic of like why markets prefer relatively scarce money to non-scarce money, aka hard money to limp money. Bitcoin is the ultimate hard money, right? The infinite Viagra money, whatever you want to call it. It absolutely lets you penetrate your will into the future in a way no other asset can.
Never before.
How is that going to make people poor? You are giving people the power to self-organize and engage in consensual acts with other people and resist the theft and coercion and inflation associated with a legacy financial system. You're actually doing the exact opposite, right? Here's another thing that's axiomatic in economics. Every act of theft is time and energy not spent producing something.
Boom.
Okay?
That's a really big deal.
But that's not all. That's not all. That's only one half of it. Okay. So the thief is not producing. So aggregate productivity goes down. But here's the other side of it. Whoever he stole from, he decreased that producer's incentive to produce in the future. Because the producer would have kept 100% of the fruits of his labor, but he just got robbed to the tune of 10%. Okay. Well, then his incentive has been reduced 10% to produce in the future. So when we start disincentivizing theft and coercion, we radically escalate productivity, innovation, human flourishing. And so Mike Green, fuck you, dude. You're stupid.
Holy moly, I love it. That is good. Yeah, John Maynard Keynes, he was a child molester. I feel like I got a crick in my neck. I was thinking I woke up the other day. I was all stiff. I'm like, I feel like I got punched by a ghost. Must have been the ghost of John Maynard Keynes. Fuck you guys. Shitting on my bullshit ideologies, my pseudoscience. It's making people poor. It's bifurcating our society. This Keynesian economic garbage. Dude, it's creating a have-not, have-yots world. People are living in the streets, feeding their children box starch, poisonous fucking food. John Maynard Keynes and your bullshit. Sorry, it's over.
Boom.
Yeah, and the scarcity. We were talking about property and the property rights and some of the negatives of just like owning property. I put up this Bitcoin Mag graphic here of just pricing in dollars comparatively to pricing in Bitcoin. And obviously it goes down significantly, down from the average median house in the United States being 24 Bitcoin in 2017, and then now it's about 4 Bitcoin, maybe even less at the time of this this live stream here. Yeah, it's actually less now with this. Even with the price down, the average house is less than that 4 Bitcoin that we have right now. So even with the price crashing and burning to 108, we might as well pack it up at this point, because the average median home is 4 Bitcoin right now.
And so the really simple way to say that is home prices are down 99% in the past 10 years. But people are like, what are you talking about? That's total malarkey. That's not true at all. It's like, yes, it is absolutely true. All you have to do is change your savings account. Just denominate and save in Bitcoin, and home prices are down. This is a fact. This is not an opinion. This chart doesn't go all the way back. It goes to 2017. But if you go all the way back to 2015, I guess I could be stand corrected, but they're down more than 90% in 10 years. Home prices are down more than 90% in 10 years. That is available to you right now. All you got to do is switch your savings account.
That is such a good point. For the last many years of my life, I have friends and loved ones that are, struggling with inflation, and they're like, things are getting more expensive. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? You live in the wrong system. They're getting cheaper for all of us that have Bitcoin every day, on average. I guess we're down today, but on average, everything you want in the world is getting cheaper if you denominate it in Bitcoin.
It's really that simple.
I think it might be even down more than 90%, because it's like in 2015, it says on 1/1 the average house was 530,646 Bitcoin, and then today it's like less than 4.
So from 5,000 down to 4.
We have it at 530,000, or no, 530. Is it
down to 4? Yeah, so that's more than 99%, I think.
Yeah. 530. Yeah.
So there you go. There's a headline for you. House prices down 99% in the past 10 years.
It's true.
Yeah.
We still rent. You're renting. I rent.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, that's part of the fiat illusion, is that houses are savings accounts. They're not. They're durable consumer goods. Everyone to each their own, but it is much better, in my opinion, to own Bitcoin than to own a house.
Yeah. And, speaking of apocalyptic futures, I went to my wife, it must have been like 4 years ago. And I was like, hey, we're saving, we're going to buy a house. We're going to move out of California. We're going to get a house. We're going to move somewhere. Why do we want that house? We could be safe. We could raise our family and whatever. And I was like, I just had this epiphany. I was probably sitting in the sauna or something, listening to one of your podcasts. And I'm like, I think we should put that money. I think I was in gold at the time. We should have put it into Bitcoin, and we should just rent, potentially for the rest of our lives. Because if things get weird, all I got to do is pick up the phone, call my landlord, and be like, hey, I'm out of here, buddy. I'm gone. In California, they fucked around. They found out. Like, my Bitcoin is no longer in California. It's just going to go wherever I go. And so if you want to be safe and live a good life, you don't have to own a home. Now, on the flip side of that, you do have some rights that, you don't have if you're renting. But I look at a house like my pickup truck, losing value. Everyone knows they go buy a car. It's a depreciating asset. And so is a house, but if you denominate it in dollars, it's an appreciating asset. But the reality is, in my humble opinion, it's a liability.
Yeah, just denominate it in gold, or denominate it, well, in Bitcoin, obviously it's collapsing, but gold, it's down. Denominate it, or strip out the expansion of M2, it's down. Like, these things are not savings accounts. The whole delusion that housing prices go up and you need to invest and flip properties, and it's all fiat induced psychosis. It's not real. So I'm sorry to all you guys. I know commercial real estate's the best performing asset over the past 50 years and blah, 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 blah. But, check your denominator. Always check your denominator so you don't get dominated.
Not to mention thermodynamics, right? So one of the things Saylor said that just blew my mind when I heard it is if you take gold, supply is increasing by 2% a year. So over 35 years, you've lost half the value of your gold. You've doubled the supply. It's the same thing with the house. If you have paid for real estate, you take $1 million piece of real estate, you're going to have 1% annual average maintenance costs. And in most jurisdictions, you're going to have 1% tax. You're going to lose half the value of that real estate over 35 years.
Well, those are very conservative numbers too. 1% and 1%. I think I don't know. You can check property tax averages, but in some states it's definitely higher than that. And 1% maintenance, I think well, my experience is that it's usually higher than that too. I mean, maybe some of that is me expanding the features of my house, but it's usually more than 1%.
Yeah, and houses, they're not durable, man. It's like, this is we got sheetrock and plywood. It's one step up from cardboard. It's one step up from cardboard. That's why Bitcoin's so important. It's what, Saylor, I love it when he said this. It's the hardest substance in the known universe.
Yeah. And again, like this is not prescriptive, to each their own. Everyone do their own thing. Now, if you can get a mortgage on good terms, then okay, great. Do that, pay your mortgage and, put that in Bitcoin. But buying one of these fiat sheetrock houses in cash when you could have that in Bitcoin instead, I mean, don't come to me as your financial advisor. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and I think something interesting just happened too, where this is the first time in history that we've seen existing homes actually be more expensive than the new homes right now for this median sale price. So I think, as you guys are saying, right, the expense and everything else, but it's also the materials. I don't know if you've seen some of the viral videos going around of the new plywood and some of the materials used for houses, at least the new builds. It seems like the new houses are just falling apart even quicker. So more people are flocking to some of these older existing homes because they were just made a little bit better with better materials, not cut as many corners. But now with the depreciation of the money, the real estate and everything, the need to get up these things quicker and quicker and quicker, everybody's just taking more and more shortcuts. And that you're seeing that in just the overall, quality of these home builds as well.
So
yeah,
this is
you can nail this.
Well, it's the most underappreciated thing about money printing. Like not everyone, but most people intuitively understand you print money and prices go up, right? You've got this more dollars chasing the same things, right? That's the trope way of saying it. But what is equally and some ways opposite, but equally true, is that the quality of those goods and services that are having their prices increase are also declining at the same time.
Why? Because you have the two options as a producer, right?
Yes. Well, basically increase your prices, right? Because your input costs have gone up. So you have to increase your prices to maintain your margins, which every time you increase your prices, you are driving your customers into the arms of your competitors, right? If we're chocolate bar competitors and I increase my prices and you keep them the same, well, they're gonna be like, well, fuck this guy. I can go get the same chocolate bar over here for this, less money. So that's a very visible signal, right? It's the honest thing to do, but it's very visible and it pushes your customers into the hands of your competition. What is less visible is to just compromise on your inputs, right? You could just use cheaper chocolate, cheaper sugar, more seed oils, less butter, all these things. You see this in every sector. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in fiat world, there's a great story actually. Will Cole told me this. He was building a cabin in Wyoming. He was building a cabin. I don't know where it was. And the contractor he was working with, he bought all these Craftsman tools and he brought them and he's like, yeah, let's use these. And the contractor's like, no, man, these aren't going to work. You got to get the Craftsman tools that were made before 1971.
Those shit.
Because literally these break and they fall apart and they don't last. But these ones from the 1971s were made with the good materials and the right way and they last basically. And so I'm not saying that it's that one-to-one direct, everything you buy pre-1971 good, everything after bad, but the incentive to compromise on the quality of products and services is equal and opposite true to the increase of prices under a money printing regime. And it's not appreciated by people. It needs to be equally appreciated. And I think if you, just turn on your spidey sense in the world. I just noticed so much low quality shit here flowing around here. Like we buy stuff online.
Yeah.
It looks good. It shows up. It immediately breaks. Like I get out of the box and it falls. I'm like, how does that happen? You got Amazon guys throwing stuff over the fence here. Like these guys just don't give a shit. They're rushed.
They just huck it over the
know,
gate.
that's a compromise in the quality of service. Why is the guy throwing my groceries over the fence? You know, because he's in a hurry. He's trying to escape inflation. He's like, I gotta go, bro. I got time for you to open the fence.
I get delivered broken glass sometimes.
Yeah.
It happened the other day. We got a cans leaking a box of carbonated water, just all wet.
Exactly. So it's the money printing like puts this frenetic impulse into the world where everything just gets shittier. Not only does it get more expensive, but it also gets shittier.
So here's an example of that. That's, I came across recently. I've been getting into firearms pretty heavily. Being in California and being a cannabis producer, I couldn't go hard on the guns. And so I've been going down that rabbit hole. Sig Sauer releases a modular pistol and they win the government contract to provide the military with pistols. There's a part inside this Striker Fire pistol that is like part of the safety mechanism. And they saved $30 per pistol by using some like pressed metal. I could be wrong about the specifics, but the point still applies. These pistols are going off in holsters, hurting people. A guy just died recently because he took his holstered pistol and set it on the table and it shot him in the chest. So that is a great example of a company that is trying to combat this inflationary bullshit. Their cost of operating is going up and they're trying to figure out how to maintain their margins and they're cutting quarters, and it is resulting in an unsafe firearm. It's a problem.
Yeah, it is a problem. Yeah, there's probably countless examples of that. And like, I want to be careful that there's all kinds of stories and you got to verify. Like, who knows? I've heard this one too, but we also heard Alex saying like, oh, I heard that might have been whatever.
There's some counter narrative around that.
But the point stands, at least. Like we could get into the arguments like, is it actually manifesting or not? But the incentive, I mean, you basically can't argue with that. It's like, well, there's definitely an incentive because your input cost went up and prices are visible. And so what else would you do as a producer? It's like, well, I'm either going to eat this or I'm going to increase prices or I'm going to start cutting on quality. Like you don't have any other options.
This is also why a Bitcoin treasury, a Bitcoin on the balance sheet is so important, because your P&L is always under attack. If you have a profitable endeavor, that's a signal to the marketplace that there is more demand for whatever good or service you're providing than there is supply. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurs and capital are going to move into that sector of the marketplace. They're going to provide that good or service. They're going to increase the supply relative to the demand, driving its price down.
Except with Bitcoin.
So got to have Bitcoin. There's no escaping it.
Yeah, and that's rapidly increasing on the balance sheet front as well. Bitwise put out this report that there was 28 Bitcoin treasury companies that bought 140.6 thousand Bitcoin in just July and August alone, which is equivalent to the whole year's supply of Bitcoin that will be mined right now at the current epoch. So, I mean, everybody's starting to see this, especially these companies, because they've just been having their balance sheets essentially evaporate away over time. And of course, Saylor was the one that opened the eyes to a lot of people. But I think it's an arms race at this point. Like we have 178 as of today, publicly traded companies, 310 different entities. And in the last 30 days alone, we have 18 new ones pop up. So give or take one every other day is now putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So I think it's just, a matter of time before Bitcoin swallows up all of these different entities and financial products, industries, and everything else. Mark Moss put out, that Bitcoin has a $300 trillion market that it could attack with the bond market, $145 trillion fixed income market. And both of those sailors are already trying to dig into already with some of the products that he's putting out. So not only is it, Bitcoin on the balance sheet, the trend, but, I think everybody in the traditional financial world is trying to, flock or find a way to obtain more Bitcoin, utilizing some of those TradFi tools right now. just to get into that new system of Bitcoin. So I think it's only a matter of time at this point.
Yeah. I also wanted to say something here. So Alec in the comments here says, I own a house. I completely agree with you. I'm thinking about selling it. I know somebody that sold their house, and as soon as they signed the escrow closing paperwork, the next sheet of paper that hit the desk was a lease, and they leased it back from the new owners, and they took all that equity and they put it into Bitcoin. They didn't even move. So there's a creative solution to that one there for you.
There we go. Yeah, and I think that there's more of these companies that are offering some sort of HELOC, but they're calling it, instead of like a home equity line of credit, it's like a home equity line of Bitcoin, where you can utilize that to buy into Bitcoin. I know Joe Consorti, I want to say, is like working on a company that's getting into that. So I think that there's more of these products that will allow you to obtain loans and, maybe not be able to implement the full sailor strategy, so to speak, but basically use your current assets to get into the best performing asset and start to go into Bitcoin. So I think, the loaning of TradFi assets, whether it's against, your stock portfolio or what have you, even loaning against your Bitcoin, that's seemingly the new craze right now, where, you essentially just never have to sell if you really don't want to, at least as it stands right now, while we're still in this dollarized world. And as we move over to that medium of exchange, that's when people will start to, I think, transact. But as it stands right now, I think it's Bitcoin's the greatest savings technology, and everybody's starting to wake up to that as well.
Yeah, and I will say, I would advise people to be careful about borrowing against their Bitcoin. That could be the siren song there. You have to pay it back to get the Bitcoin, and there is a certain element of trust me, bro, with who you're giving that Bitcoin to. I think that's slightly less applicable to some of these Bitcoin purist companies, but you're giving up possession of the Bitcoin, and so there are ways to implement creative, as Saylor would say, intelligent leverage, where you can effectively short the limp money and go long the hard money. But you got to be careful with that. You have to make sure you're fiscally responsible. And the ultimate goal would be to be a producer and have a surplus and sweep that surplus into Bitcoin. Now, if you have some sort of an emergency and you need to spin up some liquidity, borrowing against your Bitcoin is a good option. But I don't know if it's the end-all be-all solution to the need to have to go into the marketplace and provide some sort of value for compensation.
Yep. Just keep it basic, honestly. Unless you're some kind of savant, just stack sats, stay liquid, don't use debt unless you're going to get these really good fixed terms on a 30-year mortgage. Basically, is probably the most sophisticated any of you should get. And I'm not saying this to insult your intelligence. I myself also subscribe to the basic strategy. I don't consider myself to be a sailor savant. So feels good to stay liquid, out of debt, and pockets full of world money. So it's a nice way to live.
Amen to that. Now, I don't have any other topics for us today. I think it was a relatively slower week on there, but I think we dropped a lot of wisdom bombs. Why don't you do you guys have any parting words here before we wrap it all on up? Because I think we had a pretty active chat today for the second WIM live stream that we got going on.
Yeah, the simple strategy is the winning strategy. You just adopt a Bitcoin standard, figure out how to live a quality life, be healthy, optimistic, all the things, stay vigilant, but it looks like we're winning this battle. So,
well, Bitcoin is definitely winning. Fastest growing asset in human history. Doesn't get much more winning than that.
Charlie Sheen winning.
And yeah, I mean, I think the follow on to that, I guess the next step down the rabbit hole is really trying to incorporate those principles that make Bitcoin so amazing into your life. Radical truth and proof of work and self-sovereignty and radical responsibility. There's many, but it really becomes more of a life philosophy or a lifestyle. And I think, It's improved my life a lot. Most people, I think, that adhere to this code of living have also seen significant improvement in their lives. And so it's a big deal. You know, it's a really big deal. I would like to also shamelessly plug, I've started a course online, and it's going through a lot of the books that I've read. You can read them in like 50 to 100 times faster than you could read the actual book. And then we're also doing some custom audio video content of me providing commentary on some of my favorite books. We've got about 20 books on the course now, and we're working our way to 100. And I would really like some feedback on it. Just trying to help people tunnel down the rabbit hole a little bit faster. So that's at course.breedlove.io. Come check it out.
I will say too, as a longtime viewer of yours, I now that I'm here working with you, I reviewed the course and it's pretty good. I will say it is good, so it's worth checking out.
There we go. You
That, and then a little shout out to our sponsor, one of our sponsors, MindLab Pro.
Yeah, this is what we take before the pod. So, well, two things here. MindLab Pro, it's a nootropic, so it helps you be smarter, which is always good on this podcast. And then when we talk about politics, I bring the theanine because the theanine helps you calm down, helps me calm down. I don't like politics.
No, you do not.
I took
like
both
politics.
today. I took both of these, and they're both helpful.
And I got to take the MindLab Pro sitting next to this intellectual powerhouse. I need all the help I can get. So I will say, give it a try.
There we go. Well, yeah. Check all those stuff out. Check out Robert's course. Make sure you guys are subscribing to this channel as well. I see some questions in the chat as well. We're going to start ripping this around this time every Friday. So be sure to be tuned in for that. And thank you guys so much for humoring me with a little bit of the politics talk at the beginning and then ripping into some great wisdom. So thanks so much.
That's why we need you, man. I have a lot of respect for you to traverse through such a filthy realm, dude, and figure out what's happening and help the people make sense of it, man. And also, I would say to everybody listening, check out Brandon's channel. He does this more than once a week, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, Brandon, we're very grateful for you doing the dirty job that we don't want to do.
In the trenches, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
And you managed to stay so vibrant and optimistic. A lot of respect for that, dude. It's hard.
Hey, man, it's because like you guys are lining out. Like I think at this point, you know, it's all short-term negativity, maybe. But in the long run, I'm very optimistic with what Bitcoin has to offer. And you know, before I found Bitcoin, I was very down in the dumps and depressed about everything. But once I found it, I realized, hey, you know what? There is that bright orange future. So if you guys want to hear me talk and blab a little bit more about this, check over my channel at Green Candle.
And if you're not into Bitcoin yet, come on in. The water's fine.
It is. It's warm.
Orange.
Feels good. It's orange.
You can pee in it. Nobody even notices.
Nobody even notices. It has some self-cleaning function. Just transmutes all the toxicity and love into love and optimism.
Yes.
So there you go, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. See you guys same time next week.
Bammies.